Okay, Chloe, I know that Cody was also going to join. Ted. Okay. Okay. We'll get started. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm the chairperson, Kirsten Thompson, for the Woodland Hills Community Development Committee. If we could just get a quick roll call of who is in attendance. Lori is nice enough to take our notes today to help me report on those so that we can make sure we're keeping track of those and approving at our next meetings going forward. So if we could just go around and say who's in attendance so that she can take that down. We can start with Daniel.
Okay, I'm Daniel. I'm with Sunrise Engineering, or Daniel Jensen, and I am a planner and the project manager for this general plan update that the city is contracted out to. So a little bit of background, the city received a grant to do this general plan update and did a competitive process. We applied for it and were awarded the grant this summer, and we started scoping this summer, and now we're here.
Great. And Riker, you said you're with Daniel?
Yeah, I'm Riker Steglitz. I'm with Sunrise Engineering. I'm also a planner.
Great. Carrie, you're next on my screen.
Carrie Malkovich, City Council Liaison to Community Development Committee.
Ted?
Ted Mickelson, Woodland Hills City Public Works Director, City Engineer, Building Official, Emergency Services.
Fire Chief.
Wonderful. Cody.
Cody Chamberlain, previously with Davies Design Build. Currently do just freelance work, and I'm on the community development team. So
Great. And then Chloe. I don't think we can hear you.
Chloe, you might be muted.
Oh, she's having technical difficulties, she said. She is also a member of our Community Development Committee. That might have been her. That's okay. Okay. Chloe, you can always just use the chat like you did before, if for some reason your audio is having issues. We need to approve the last meeting minutes. The last one I had on record, besides just the short meeting that we had as our kickoff in June. The last one prior to that was approval of minutes, was when we replaced Rod Munn on the Community Development Committee. He had submitted resignation. We discussed several names, qualifications, community involvement, etc. And that's where we nominated Lori to fill that vacancy. And we just proposed that nomination to the city council. It's ultimately their choice to select the person, the replacement for the community development committee. So if somebody would like to do the first vote to approve those minutes.
I will.
Great. Do we have a
And
second?
And I'll second it because I can talk
Hey,
now.
your audio is working. Fantastic.
Yay!
Okay, so that order is done. Something else, Cody, if you
Need to
wanted to
vote.
go now.
Kirsten, I
Sorry?
think we need to vote on that.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but if we could all vote with a yay or nay. I motion to approve the last agenda meeting minutes. So myself is a yay. Cody? Do you
Yeah.
approve last meeting minutes? Chloe?
Yay.
Okay, I don't think anybody else are voting members on here, so that's how it moves forward. Well, and Lori, you are.
Yay.
Great. Okay. Are we good on that? Great. There was something that came up. Cody, if you wanted to share.
Yeah, I'll be moving in about a month, and so I will not be able to be on the committee anymore.
So if we could have that in our minutes to be aware of that we will need to hold a meeting to nominate a replacement for Cody Chamberlain. We're grateful for the time that he's served on our committee. But we get that life ebbs and flows and he's moving. So, but yeah, if we could have that noted, we'll work on that moving forward. Okay. Let's see here. So now we can go ahead and turn over to Daniel to review the proposed survey by Sunrise.
Okay. So I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm okay to share my screen. Yeah.
Sure.
Let's see. Can I go? So before I jump into the survey, I'll go back into some of the assumptions that I came across while doing the scoping. I was a little surprised just based on my familiarity with the 2017 general plan and the assumption and the goals that are in that plan, and then looking at what's happening on the ground and making sure they're aligned moving forward. So one of the things is, as a planner, when we look at the big picture of how to do planning, we often talk about density or walkable communities or these sorts of things. And we typically look at that in the town center, and then as you get to a periphery, you have less and less density. So as a planner, the great thing is my best practices are aligned with maybe some of the NIMBY desires that a community would have, in that Woodland Hills, as you all know, when we look at the Wasatch Front at a macro level, is on the outskirts. You're surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. So there's really not much of a need or desire from an urban planning standpoint to increase density in the community. So the type of, the status quo that has occurred is great from a planning standpoint, because we're not putting density on the periphery of the developed area. So I did see in the census data that the average commute time for Woodland Hills is above Utah's average and the national average. It's about 28 minutes for a commute compared to Utah average of 21 or 22 minutes. And that's because there aren't a lot of jobs, as you know, in Woodland Hills, unless you're working from home. And so people are commuting to Spanish Fork and Provo, and that's just how it's going to be. So we can work with that assumption. Now, one assumption that was in there is growth. The 2017 plan, it seemed like what it did is it took the growth trajectories of the past and projected that forward, which was about 3.5% per year. However, what we've seen is once Woodland Hills reached a stage that was close to build out, that population has not continued to grow at that level. In fact, as residents per household has dropped in the last decade, we've seen that the number of households in Woodland Hills has increased while the number of residents has decreased. And that phenomenon isn't too surprising. We see that same phenomenon in other areas of the Wasatch Front. For example, I live in Provo. Provo's done that. Provo has fewer residents than it used to, even though there are definitely more units. It's just a function of household size decrease. And so right here, you can see the Kim C. Gardner Institute, their estimates per year show 1529 in 2020, then a slight drop each year. Not significant, but basically flat. I'm not sure how accurate this is with the exact numbers, but I think the trend is going to be pretty accurate, that we're not seeing a huge decline or anything, but we're also not seeing the kind of growth that you're experiencing in a Payson or Salem or Elkridge or Spanish Fork or Santaquin, right? And that's a function of the map, which let's get to in a second. So the population pyramid is also pretty atypical for Utah. You can see that while there are a good number of kids, the number of adults increases as we get into retirement years or close to retirement years. And so the bulk of adults are actually that age group from 50 to 70 and not the 25 to 40 or 50 demographic that you tend to see. You normally see a pyramid really wide and then gradually coming in as it goes, just like a pyramid, hence the name. And that's not what we see here. And so that shows that the trend that you all see on the ground is indeed happening, that Woodland Hills is a place that young families don't start off commonly. And it's a place that people move into. Some people have younger kids, but a lot of empty nesters. And that's probably historically fairly accurate, but certainly how it's going to be for the near future. And that's a function of.
I wonder too if some of those kids are multi-generational households where you have kids having children living with their parents, right? So I would imagine, I know at least in our section of the city, there's quite a bit of that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Is that what others are seeing as well? Just anecdotally?
I mean, yes and no. We have mostly older retiree style people, but I also see a couple families that have moved in that are younger and aren't taking care of their parents yet and have kids that are in like middle or high school. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and I would say the Summit Creek area, you're probably not seeing that. I don't know how much.
I'm seeing a lot of the older retirement. We're having less and less families in our area. Not a lot of families can afford to live in Woodland Hills right now, especially with interest rates. So the homes that are being sold are sold to people out of state, and they're usually retired.
yeah,
And Carrie, I agree with you. I think that the younger demographic won't move to Woodland Hills. It's out of their price range.
yeah. Yeah, the average or the median house is 885. I was saying that probably is a little low because that's based on homes that have higher turnover, not based on just the average home. So yeah, more than double or double the average for Utah. So these aren't going to be starter homes, at least not very often. And that's interesting. I was wondering about the 0 to 5 and 5 to 9 year range. That would make sense that kids in households where the kids are 10 and 19 years old, those could be people who are moving up, but kids who are in these smaller households may be living with grandma and grandpa. And I mean, parents and grandma and grandpa. That does make sense. Municipal boundaries map. So with Woodland Hills being largely built out, as you all know, south and east side, those are mountains. There's really no ability to continue building in those directions. The west side, you have the ridge right there as well. So it's really just that northwest side. And that's what we see when we dig into a little bit more. On the southwest side, you have empty lots, but everything is platted. So not a lot of opportunity from a land use perspective and from a land use policy perspective, I should say. Those decisions have been made, the land's platted. It's just a matter of when the people who own the lots are ready to build. But then on the northwest side, there are platted lots, subdivisions that have been approved where we're not at build out quite yet, but that's been occurring. I'm sure that's where most of your building permits are located. And then there is some vacant land there in the whatever you call it, like the lowland flats, like that the lower lands there, where you could have some
We just say down by the roundabout. I don't know, does anybody else have a
down by the roundabout. Yeah,
more specific term for those?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I have a
land.
much better term, just next to the mailboxes.
Oh, west of the
Hey,
mailboxes.
The
back
Hanks
then?
property, Nelson's property.
Yeah. So there's some opportunity for decision with some of that land, but most of the land's accounted for from a land use perspective. It's either part of a platted subdivision and unbuilt, or it's already built on. I actually went through and counted, and the number was something like 123 vacant lots in the city. So like platted lots, and that represents some future growth. If you figure with an average of 3.5 people per household and 123 lots, you're looking at 500 new residents. So there is opportunity, well, not just opportunity, there is growth slated on all of those. So that would put Woodland Hills up to about 2,000 in population. And then there are some areas that are unplatted as well. So a little bit of growth, but the last general plan looked at growth all the way up to 5,000 residents. I don't think that's going to happen unless I'm missing something. That had projections of things about 3,000 residents by 2030, and it looks like we'll probably be shy of that as well. So that changes the assumption of the general
And
plan.
some of them we did with the utility master plans projected
Mhm.
about 3,300 at build out or somewhere in that neighborhood.
At build out, at total build out, right?
Total build out, yeah.
Yeah, and once it hits that, the only fluctuation would be major shifts in the average number of individuals per household.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that sounds about right. And did the utility plan estimate what year you'd reach total build out? Is that like a 2040,
About 2060.
2060? Okay. So gradual growth up to that point.
Yeah, it was a pretty slow growth, average slow growth. And
Yeah.
we've seen what, 5 5 homes so far this year that have finished and people moved into.
Okay, so that is pretty slow.
Question though,
Mhm.
not necessarily that this has an answer, but more of hypothetical. When Three Bridges is done, could that potentially change that growth to increase because it would bring more, eyes in this area?
I think the challenge we're gonna have is just we're landlocked, so we have no more space to grow. We can only fill in so much.
I mean, that
I don't know
26
that
more than,
the 2060 could come down, the time it takes us to get to build out could decrease a bit. I don't think the total population will change at build out.
Correct.
But it could reduce it by a bit, but I don't, yeah, it's
yeah,
hard.
I'm not,
And I
I'm
think-
just more asking. I don't know if that would change how fast we hit that build out number. It was just more of a curious observation.
Because Ted, you're
I-
saying for build out, that means each lot that's unbuilt in these subdivisions would have a house.
Right.
And right now, you have many people who own lots that they're just holding on to for investment purposes or future development purposes. And so those will just trickle in over the next few decades, right? I mean, that's the assumption here.
That, and yeah, and then we've got those farmlands at the bottom of town along 11200 that still have yet to develop. I think there'll be a little higher density down there, like Four Seasons.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know that we could see maybe instead of 2060, 2055, but just our historically, even during the what you would call the boom years, when development was just going crazy, we just weren't seeing that high of a percent up here
Mhm.
because of the nature of the cost of homes and stuff like that. We're never going to be a starter home community that I can see.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing is, as long as interest rates are where they're at, even though we're trying to accommodate more single-family homes in our state, just the nature of no business, far away, the topography, everything else is lending itself to not be a community where young families are coming. And so I don't see that the population, although we might get more homes, the population itself will probably not be increasing at a very steady rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that MAG pulled, I think it was a year, could have been longer. They pulled that road that was going to meet up with the roundabout. That road was supposed to go all the way to Highway 6. And so transportation wise as well, it's not as easy, or would it in the future, it will not be as easy to get up here. So
Mhm. Yeah. Since you mentioned transportation, here's the transportation map. Trips per day, pretty small once you get south of 11,200. And then it's north of that where you see the traffic. And I'm sure anecdotally you're all very well aware of this, right? 5,000 trips per day as you go north, but within Woodland Hills, the number of trips per day is under 1,000. The Strava heat map was kind of interesting just to see where people are recreating. Seems like most all the roads people use for walking and jogging. And then the only trail, I thought you'd have more social trails, like illegal trails that people have been creating or just, going on. And I didn't see that. So it's just the switchbacks that is quite popular. And it was nice to see some of the improvements with the new trailhead signage that's there. And it seems like the comments online are very positive, and that was good to see. And then what else? Okay, so take a look at the 2017 general plan that had a survey, and the survey's at the back. So I went through that to see what was asked before and what kind of feedback the town received. So the questions that were asked were things like, what are the main reasons you live in Woodland Hills? People suggested they like the large lot sizes. What would you want to see improved? Roads was the top answer. What type of commercial would you like? None. What would be your main concern with commercial growth? It's just the noise and people don't want it. How do you hear what's happening in Woodland Hills? At that point, there wasn't a social media presence, at least reported. So it was the city newsletter and emails. How do you use the city pathways? People said they didn't, or they would want to use ATVs. They wanted to see a trail system from the mailboxes to the park. And then what do you dislike? There was a sentiment that ordinances were not enforced. What would you like to stay the same? The rural character. What would you want to add? Trails. And any other thing you wanted to share, and that was they wanted to protect kind of what they have, fix what they have, and protect what they have, water, wilderness. So that's what I saw. So questions off of that, new trails, the switchback, is that an entirely new trail, or is it just that improvements have been made to that trail in recent years? And I don't know the answer to that.
Sorry, what was the
It-
question again? Oh,
With the switchback
It's been
trail?
there it's been there forever. It was an old hunting trail back in the day.
it was actually
People
built by
used
a,
it.
it was built
Yeah.
by a sheep herder that built it to get his truck back in there to get water to his sheep. Actually
Okay.
talked to the grandson of the guy who built that trail.
Okay. And recently, though, the city has done some improvements. It looks like the signage was new.
Yeah, a little bit of signage is up there, and then also the water bars and stuff like that, but not
Okay.
major, but yeah.
Um,
We also put an ATV, the bollards in to limit the ATV size.
right, okay. Are there discussions about other improvements for that trail or extension of that trail, or are there things you'd want to know from the community about perceptions of that trail or what they'd want as it relates to that trail?
It'd be interesting, maybe just for your information, Daniel, we were recently awarded a grant to do some trail study.
Yep.
Which you're probably aware of. So we'll kind of tie that in with this, and part of that, it'll help us also better understand what kind of additional trails there might be. So I think between the two, but I've heard of maybe well, I better not speak it. Maybe I better not say this right now. It might be
Daniel, the top of the trail is actually state land.
Yes.
And so as we go up, the trail stops, but at our property, but it continues on state property. And I don't know if there's the availability to do something like Draper did, where they extended their trail. They had a, I don't know if it's an MOU or what, but extending the trail farther using state land and making it actually go someplace so that there isn't just an end and come back.
I've heard rumor too that this could possibly be tied in with a neighboring development trail system.
Okay.
Yes, I've heard that too.
I personally would love to hear what people think about adding more trails or connecting trails to other things. I know that the neighbors that I mostly spend time with are very active and love our trail system, but they're pretty steep right now. That's not an easy trail, especially if you have little kids or older people that you'd like to take the trail. So if we had options for that included them too, I think that could be wonderful to explore that more.
So as I've looked at this, as Carrie mentions, it ends at the DNR property, Utah DNR. It seems like you could have a ridgeline trail that has switchbacks that can make it all the way up to Loafer and Santaquin Peak, which would then connect into the rest of Nebo, the whole Payson Canyon area. Is that part of the idea, is to connect it up, or is it more to connect it with a Bonneville shoreline type situation where it goes along the hillside and connects more into Forebay?
I think people would like both, and also the idea of connecting into Salem, which then connects into Spanish Fork Trail System, which connects into the big Utah Lake Trail System that will go all the way around. That's the goal of the governor, is to have connectivity, right? And so I think people like both the high and the low.
Yes.
Of course, it's always about funding and how do we get there, but we do have a Parks and Trails Committee. And as Ted mentioned, we have a grant to do a trail study, but it would be nice for us to be able to put it in the last general plan. Unfortunately, they put in some trails, but it went on and through people's property, private property, that did not have trail easements. And so that caused a lot of angst to people when they saw that. So I want us to be very clear that we're not going to just put them on a map just to say, oh, here are some proposals, but actually that there's real possibility of trail easements and or accessibility. The other thing is with the switchback trails, the one thing that people have, those who live at the trailhead, as well as others come, we don't necessarily have, quote unquote, the trailhead with adequate parking or garbage, anything like that, that would lighting, whatever, to make it a safe, accessible way, especially year round, because people do use the trail all year, snowshoeing or hiking, whichever. And so I think that's something that needs to be considered as well, on how do we own some city property up there, but I don't know if it's adequate for the kind of parking that may be needed. The trail used to be kind of like a hidden wonder of Woodland Hills, but it was put on the All Trails map, and now we get people from everywhere who love to use it, but we don't really have the adequate space for parking.
Right. Right now, I noticed it's 2 lots in that subdivision that are owned by the city, and there's a dirt pull-off area on those lots, and that's really about what you have for parking, other than parking in front of people's houses. So what is the status then of the trails plan? Like what efforts would we want now in this survey, and without conflicting with that trails study?
We're still in we haven't even got the contract, and so it's being funded by, it come through MAG, it's being funded by the county. Still working on the interlocal agreement with the county, so we haven't even hired a consultant yet to.
And with the trails study, would you be doing a public survey?
Likely, but that might be something we would discuss with who's ever selected to do the project. But I would guess we would want to do that. I mean, that's always a good idea to get the public input when you're working on things like that.
Okay, I'm just thinking if you're not going to do a public survey, we'd want to ask more questions now. But if you're going to do a public survey, I don't want to duplicate and conflict in any way.
You're probably talking, we're probably several months away from even starting the project. I mean, we're probably at least 3 months from starting the project.
So what would it be helpful to know now before you go into a future survey on that trail?
I wonder if it would be good to know the priority of the residents in spending money on the trail over other projects in the city.
So using municipal funding as opposed to grants?
Yes.
Okay. And that would be funding for what, trailhead improvements, purchasing easements, like access easements?
Yes, or connecting it to other,
Yes, all of the above.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, maybe even I mean, this might be taboo to say, but even other cities, as they've been going forward with their trail systems, they've put on that, I forgot the acronym, but it's like the Parks and Trails assessment.
Yeah,
to
like
see
paid
if
for
people-
by the rec and
Well,
park tax.
Like the RAP
Yeah.
tax?
Yeah,
Yes.
the RAP tax, that's the one I'm trying to think of. And
Yes.
just to see if they're even interested in pursuing that, because if not, then, it doesn't, people will say, yes, use your city dollars, but we really run a really tight ship and we don't have a lot of extra for things. And so you can't say, oh, we're going to do parks and trails now, but we will not be able to do water and roads. So I think that maybe something to say, do you want city funds used for this? And if so, how do you want them to collect them? And this is one of the ways it can be done. Otherwise you can, we just really don't have, Switchbacks is our only trail, but we don't have a fee to use that trail.
I think it would be interesting to see people like rank what they think is important and like having to decide what part trails, parks, recreation would be on that ranking list, and to be able to show them the options and then kind of have people step through that might be interesting to do.
So I'm not as well versed in municipal finance. I know the RAP tax is up to 0.1% tax on the like an increase on the sales tax. With Woodland Hills not having commercial, you still get a percentage of sales tax from the state from online sales, or where would an increase in sales tax, like how much would an increase in sales tax impact Woodland Hills?
Lori probably has those numbers, but we get now that we can have tax from online sales, we do get a fair amount, but I don't know if it's enough to really make a difference on when you're talking about buying easements and doing all of those things. But Lori's our finance person and she might know.
I would
Property
have,
tax is really where we get a lot of our income from, majority.
You get a majority of tax from what?
Property tax.
From property tax, right? And the RAP tax could not affect property tax. It would only be sales tax.
Yeah, I think most of ours, Lori, are just online, right? Amazon or
Yeah.
whatever. Amazon,
Yeah. And I don't have my computer here, but I could check on that and see how much we do get.
So
But
if
I would also, excuse
well,
me,
if it's
I
a
would,
0.1% local option, do you think we're talking about just a few $1,000s per year, or would it be more sizable than that?
I think it would just be a few thousand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which helpful for maybe some signage, but not for purchasing land.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments on the trail?
Well, I think that if you know of any other options for revenue that can be dedicated to trails, maybe if we put that on the survey, these are some potential options, rank the options, or, none at all. Maybe what some of the other communities who have have done trail systems. That might be helpful even in explaining how trails are funded in general, because they see the surrounding communities getting new trails, but they don't realize it's associated with sales tax. And so I think that's just an educational point of that we could put in the survey that at least would help them understand where traditional funding comes from, and where we don't have that, what are some other things that we might can do that you would be open to?
One option is like having people pay for parking up there. Not that we have a lot of room to deal with that, but
Well, and I
Mhm.
wonder if residents would rather spend any money, instead of connecting our trail to others, or, doing work there, but maybe on improving the park, the playground, pickleball courts, or just if there's something else that they would rather see the money put towards.
So I put questions in about the park, and I'm wondering, are there already rumblings in the community about certain facilities that are desired in the park? Right now, disc golf, picnic area, playground. Is there a change people may want that you've heard rumblings about?
Pickleball.
That's popular.
Restrooms.
What was that second one?
Restrooms.
Yes. Yeah, and I've included both of those in the survey, but okay.
And I know that one time when we asked about restrooms, one of the issues was safety in parks. I know a lot of communities, public safety is an issue with public restrooms, right? Especially in the evenings or whatnot. And so we might want to make sure that somewhere public safety of public facilities, or even the park trails, etc., is on there, so that we assume it's safe because we've been a little city, but more and more people are using these public areas that may or may not be citizens, that then, or they hear something from another community that they get worried about. And we don't have a full-time dedicated law enforcement. We only have part-time. And so, unless we really activated our community watch, that might be an issue, because it has been an issue in the past about, do you lock the doors? Do you not? So having the porta potty that we have, which is not a good solution, but it works because you can't have, not a lot of people can fit in there. There's not a lot of crime associated with a honey bucket.
No. No, there's not. Okay. Another thing that was brought up in the last survey was the internet, frustration with internet access, fiber. Has that changed in the last 7 years?
Absolutely.
Okay,
We have fiber.
have fiber now. So you think people are content with internet access today?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we had an 80% take rate. So it's pretty high.
Okay. Then the last thing from the last survey, well, no, there's a couple more. Roads. Do you feel like road maintenance has improved, stayed the same, or worsened since the 2017 general plan?
I feel like that depends on who you ask.
Yeah, this is definitely a TED question, because Ted, tell them about what you're doing in your.
Getting better. So I think it's been status quo because I know for the last at least years I've been here, the solution has been crack seal every year. Just spend some money doing crack seal every year, and the roads keep kind of falling apart, and they just kept crack sealing them, which is all right, but it's not the right solution all the time. So, I would say, as far as the roads, taking care of them has been status quo, but they've probably been getting in worse condition every year with the crack sealing. But we just finished a pavement management plan a couple months ago, and we're actually going to start designing our first road pavement preservation project this winter, and then have it done, and about 4 miles of road done next spring. And then from there on, we've got now a plan to do so much road every year, and crack sealing's not any of it, it's gonna be the right improvements. So probably generally status quo has been the treatment, but gonna get better.
Okay.
Is there any way, Daniel, with that then that we can form a question so people just an educational type question? So
Certainly.
people know that we just finished this road maintenance plan and this is when it's going to start or whatever, but form it in a question so we know if they know. And then Ted can help with that educational portion of what's happening.
There will be a TED's talk coming out in the newsletter in the next few months about it.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I've got to start preparing people as to why we're going to start on our better roads first before doing the bad roads, because not everybody understands that concept. So
Is there any feedback from the community that you'd like as part of this that relates to these roads?
yeah, I don't know. I think I think it's going to be more of education right now.
Okay. And then
We can ask them how they feel about the roads, but I know what the answers are going to be right now. So
even if it's perfect, people are going to complain.
Well, could we say something like, do you know that the city just finished this road plan and do you know where to find
Information.
information going forward, right? Something like that, because if they say no, then Ted can then, as he does his TED's talk, incorporate some of the things that they say they don't know.
I don't know. We don't really have any information out there for them to go look for. So I don't know that I include that part of it, but maybe just, an education part of it. Like, do you know the city's recently completed a pavement management plan and will begin working on the roads? Or I don't even know how to word that, but because it's not information that we'll make available to the public because it was done through a AI software.
Okay.
And I can't give them access to it, or else it's going to cost us thousands and thousands of dollars to get everybody in access. So,
But I can ask a generic question like,
how would you
road
like to learn about our pavement management plan? Maybe that's a question.
Okay.
Facebook, through social media, through
Newsletter.
base website, stuff like that. How would you like to learn more about it or something like that?
Would that include, does it include like future road closures or other impacts on
Yeah,
residents?
maybe how would you like to receive information about how your road will be impacted or when or stuff like that?
How your
Maybe even
roads impacted.
Just at the beginning of the project, if they would like to tune into a webinar where Ted explains, the big picture of it all, and then they can at least be educated with that and then come back down into the weeds as it progresses.
I'm not going to commit you to that, Ted. But if you wanted to do that,
We'll direct them to TED Talks.
Okay. All right. Well,
I just wanted to note real quick, Severin joined. Severin is our another liaison. Severin, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, maybe he can't hear, but at least Lori maybe note that he's joined the call.
Okay, and I remember meeting Severin before. I think Riker is probably the only new person for Severin. Well, the next thing I saw in the last survey was communication, but then there's been increased social media presence, certainly since 2017, that wasn't even addressed. I know Woodland Hills has a couple different informal Facebook pages that are pretty popular. I'm in both of them, so I see comments from residents about deer getting in yards and all that sort of stuff. So I'm assuming that's been a pretty effective way to get out information and receive information from the public. And then code enforcement was mentioned in the last general plan. And I'm wondering, since 2017, have code enforcement efforts changed? Or philosophies toward code enforcement?
Well, I know Wayne's sitting there, it looks like in the council room, but we now have a code enforcement officer.
Oh,
I don't know, did we have one? We may have had one in 2017 too, I don't know, but I think we got one that's very active in the city right now.
okay. Great. Well, that's what I saw in the old survey. So the new survey, let's see, share screen right here. So still working on it. I'll update it based on this feedback as well, and then I'll send it out to everyone. So I've tried to build off of the 2017 general plan survey. So we're not asking the same questions. We're building off of it and we're adjusting. So the first questions are generic. Oh, and a little bit of background. The survey, I'll use the data to inform the general plan. So I'll cite it directly in the general plan. The data, some of the questions are real softball questions, but they are important to provide cover to the city council. So we can say, hey, we thought this was important. We surveyed, and sure enough, it is important. Here are the numbers, right? So we're not going to find out much as opposed to have actual data, as opposed to just an idea. And then some of the questions, hopefully, are questions where we don't know the answer and we're trying to find out the answer, right? So some of the questions you may look at it and say, we already know the answer to that. We know how people are going to answer. That's fine. That's the point.
Do we also have questions that are more from the strategic plan side, not just the general plan side?
Yeah, and I want to get to that. So let's just jump in. So the first questions are things like, is Woodland Hills a great place to live? Why don't I hit preview? Okay, you can still see it, right?
Yes.
Woodland Hills is a great place to live. Strongly agree, disagree, right? It's a great place to raise a family. I'm optimistic about the future of Woodland Hills. What do you like about living in Woodland Hills? They can select things they like. I put things that I thought would be common. And then also an open category, fill in the blank. Your biggest challenges and concerns living in Woodland Hills. Whether they're satisfied with current recreation opportunities. If they would like additional trails, I'll massage that. I'll probably make it a separate category for trails. I think we'll want to ask a few questions there specific to trails and recreation and the park. So the park provides the amenities my family and I would like. What additional amenities would you like? Oh, a blank question I haven't filled out yet. Then how important are each of the following to you? So this is housing. So quality housing for different ages and demographics, housing affordability. I was wondering about the city's plans or thoughts on senior living care center, some like senior health center. Is that something that's discussed? It just intuitively, it seems like with that population base, it could be a great location to have some sort of health center, and that could bring in some tax revenue as well.
I think you saw our demographics. I think we're already, most of us are senior housing,
Right.
just at my house.
Well, we have had some discussions or people who have come to us and asking potentially on that farmland if we would ever consider doing 55 and older homes where
Oh.
it's, a specific area, because most of our residents who move out are moving to the ones in Payson, the 55 and older communities. And so they would still love to live on the mountain, but they just can't keep up with the acreage and the snow and whatnot. And so there's quite a few people that have brought that up of potentially having the 55 and older community, which then could put in some sort of other service along with that.
Mm-hmm. So that would be like what Payson's done, where you have the 55 plus, but then you also have some sort of health, like medical or care center that is adjacent to that. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Is that the idea?
I think because that's where they have been going. So I think that's something to at least think about.
Okay.
And maybe as you're surveying them to see if that's even on their minds or not. But I know the 55 and older community is, we have never really talked about services.
Okay.
But
so that's where I put this question together: proximity to senior living and care centers to facilitate aging in place. But maybe based on that, do I split this question into two different ones, a 55 plus housing and then healthcare?
I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Then availability of commercial options, then connection to the outdoors, nature, and beautification of the city. So These are all questions where they're just saying how important that is to them. Then, because the city is largely built out and there aren't a lot of urban planning decisions, if you will, remaining. My thought with the general plan is a heavy focus on quality of life issues. So that would be like trail quality or street quality, or, you know, quality of certain services. And a part of that was community connectivity. And I'm interested in hearing from residents, do they feel connected to their community? And if so, great, what's working? And the city can continue doing that. And if no, are they wanting to see more community connection? What could the city be doing? That's kind of a direction I went. You can tell me what you think about it. You can take a look at the survey closer. Tell me your thoughts. So I have questions included in here. Like, I feel connected to my community. I would like to be more involved in my community. How important are the following? Community events, knowing and trusting my neighbors, having community places to gather, receiving communication from the city about happenings around town. How do you currently follow what's happening in the community? I'm content with my access to information about community events and whatnot. And then what community services or activities would you use or find helpful? So I don't know what you all think about these questions. You can, if you know now, you can tell me, or when you review, you can give me comments. I'm also wondering about what community services or activities already exist. I know there's Woodland Hills Days, and that's coming up, and I'll be there. But we're also wondering, you know, what else could Woodland Hills be doing to support the residents? And so we came up with a list of things, but I don't know what's already offered. So some of these may be things where you say, hey, we're already doing that, we can strike them. Or we could ask questions about how beneficial existing services are. If you're wondering if you want to continue doing those things, I'm thinking things like community service projects, or, you know, other volunteer events, other activities like senior activities or youth activities. We
To
see a
comment
lot.
on something that's already offered would be like chipper days, where it's kind of, I think, along the lines of the yard waste disposal. You put your,
Okay. Chipper Days is already offered.
yes.
Okay.
I don't know if there's interest, Ted or others, to offer something else, like you're saying, a dumpster
Yeah,
day.
I would add that in. We're actually may end up doing dumpsters this year. We received some mitigation grants through a couple different programs, and
Mhm.
one of them we're doing the chipper days this fall. So we do one in the spring. This year we got some grant money to do one in the fall, but I also have some grant money to do some yard waste dumpsters or something like that too this fall. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get this grant money spent. So
Is Chipper Days a new thing, or has that been ongoing?
it's been going on for quite a while.
Ongoing.
It helps with our fire mitigation efforts as a
Yes.
community.
Per your grant, would it be helpful to have data that show that a certain amount of residents support it?
Well, I probably, I mean, chipper days, we get a lot of, I think there's almost inclusive, you know, support for that. And those that clear their yards, they can go in on our website. There's, when we list it, where they can go in and fill out how many hours they spent and what, because it all goes towards the grant, our match on the grant.
Right.
So we do have a way for them to do that. So, but finding out more about yard waste disposals, I've always wondered about that, because we do chipper days. So do they also want disposals? You know, finding out if people like the chipper days, or what they think about it's probably not a bad idea. I mean, it's usually a pretty big hit.
A few years ago, we did the green waste dumpsters, but we found that people were just dumping everything in there. And so it wasn't very successful, even though we had big signs and everything up. It was hard for us to get
And
rid of
actually,
it
Carrie,
because they had put some more stuff in.
the report that came back from the company that does the disposal for us,
Waste management.
Waste Management. The report that came back from them was that our city was really good at keeping green waste in the bins compared to other
Well,
cities.
I think what Craig had to do is he was getting people to jump in and take out furniture and computers and things like that to try to keep it as green as possible. But we did, you know, we tried to make some big signs that said green waste only, because, you know, people are just don't, they're just like, oh, there's more dumpsters, because especially as we increase our price of our you know, residential dumpsters, that lends them to say, oh, here's a free one. So we just have to make sure that they're clearly marked. But I think it would be great to see if people would appreciate having those green waste dumpsters. You know, in the winter, we've tried to have, like at Christmas time, we used to have the dumpster just for boxes, you know, just because we have everything's delivered, Amazon, etc. And we had some that were just for cardboard and recycling. And that seems to benefit people if they use them properly.
And did the service around Christmas stop? Did you just do that for a few years, or is that ongoing?
I don't think we did it this last year. We had somebody start a fire in one once, and of course, probably just pranksters. But I don't remember. Do you remember, Lori, if we,
I think the last time we did it was 3 years ago.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I was going to say 3 or 4 years ago.
And I don't think we did one consistently before that.
People liked it a lot because otherwise they have to take their boxes down and put them in Salem's. So they liked it. It just, there was just some issues with us having it. Again, it might just be an educational issue. But if people know that they would like it, then are they willing to, you know, do the rules that are associated with specific, you know, those specialized dumpsters?
What about having, and I know this is an additional cost, but what about having a traditional dumpster at the same time? So if someone does have the old TV or treadmill that's broken, they could bring that out and they won't be tempted to put it in green waste because you actually have provided the other dumpster.
So we talked about that this year, and we may end up doing that. We're going to, we're doing some cleaning here at our Public Works building. So we thought about getting a dumpster to do that, but then also make it open or have it open to the public to dump some of their trash here. Some of their waste here while we're doing kind of the green waste thing.
Yeah, I think that having both sounds like a great idea.
That could help with code enforcement too. You have some of the properties that need to get rid of things in the yard. The Woodland Hills isn't as cluttered as some cities are. Okay, any other activities, services like that you are curious about?
I think just if they would like to have, are they okay that we have basically 2 celebrations? We have Woodland Hills Day, we have the Maple Fest. If people are interested in more community events that are full community events, or if they would like smaller community events, like you mentioned, things for seniors or things for youth, if they would like it broken down into specific demographics at all.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll split this question up into probably a few different questions. I can batch the services together that are like, you know, the chipper days and the yard waste and all that in one question. And then I can ask a question about the 2 ongoing larger community events, right? Woodland Hills Days and Maple Fest. And then I could ask another question about smaller activities. Is that kind of what we're thinking?
Carrie, we did have that group that asked about having a potluck senior luncheon monthly.
Yeah, they did that, and
nice.
the council thought that was giving preference to one particular group over another and kind of nixed it. So I think if we knew that more people would come and it was a community thing, it might be more well received about letting people come and use the center.
I agree.
So like having it as a potluck luncheon, but not specifying seniors?
No,
No,
seniors.
still specifying seniors,
okay.
because I think they want to do it. There was just a hang up over some logistics and, you know, if you're targeting one particular group over another and using city facilities and giving them preference, that kind of thing. And so we just need to, if we know that people want to do it, then, and it's a community-wide thing and not just one particular empty nester group, then
Okay.
it seems to be a little bit more, that it would be a city-wide thing.
Right, right. Not just someone knows someone who wants to get some friends together. Okay. Then second to last group of questions here. Sidewalks. That was mentioned before. And I don't know too much about the long-term plans. I see sidewalks are being constructed in the new development areas on the north side, so the lower side of town. I thought I'd heard something about sidewalk along Woodland Hills Drive. Has there been discussion there? And then the rest of the town has no sidewalks. But is there any change there, any discussion there, anything you want to know about sidewalks and perception of sidewalks?
It would be interesting to see what they think about trails along there, just because the trail grant we got had identified that as a potential location for a trail is right up Woodland Hills Drive. Now it may be complex just because of the property ownerships and all that kind of stuff, but and closeness to the road and a few things like that. But having said that, it'd be interesting to see, because I think that's in part what the trails study is going to look at, is a trail going up alongside Woodland Hills Drive.
And I think people are interested in, would it be a summer only non-paved trail versus a year-round paved trail? That goes up and down for safety reasons, right? Up and down Woodland Hills Drive, which does get pretty steep in some places.
Yes.
But that's one of the things that I've heard from people is, if you put it there, then, who maintains it, which is the city. How wide is it? Is going to be for bike riding as well as walking. I mean, there's a whole bunch of nuances with a trail and how wide it is, and if it's going to have year-round access, etc. So,
Okay. So do we want to ask a question? I mean, I'm assuming the answers are, we don't really want sidewalks throughout all of town, but maybe along Woodland Hills Drive, and just so you have that data? Or we want to not ask that kind of question and just target the question specifically to Woodland Hills Drive?
I don't think people are wanting sidewalks. I think that they would consider a paved, unpaved trail.
Okay.
Because that gives a different perception, right? Because I don't think that they are looking for a sidewalk as a trail. They want a real trail.
Go ahead.
And your council doesn't need that data, right? Your council already knows we don't need sidewalks. Like, they're not wanting to get numbers back from the community on that, right?
No, more just on the trail, type
Okay.
of trail that, which maybe this trail grant, the trail study will go into more depth on that, but we could do a high level question just so it gives them a starting point.
Okay. All right. Well, I will massage that. Someone else had started to speak. Do they want to share a comment before I move on?
No, I was just going to echo what Carrie said about not calling it a sidewalk. I think people think that sidewalks mean like strangers looking in their houses, whereas they see more like a trail as something that people actively would use, and it's less invasive. And I would say definitely call it a trail.
Okay.
Yeah, and we like mountain stuff, not city stuff. So
Yeah, that's
My
fair.
concern though is, as a parent with a kid walking home from the school bus, am I gonna think that a trail is going to be the mechanism for my kid walking home, or is it going to be a sidewalk, right? Like, are you going to lose parents because they're not going to understand that a trail might facilitate kids walking?
Right. And I mean, I've got kids that walk, and I would say if you had a paved trail, I would assume it's similar to like Spanish Fork that kind of has like an asphalt trail, and I would know kids could walk that. But maybe we're asking between a paved trail and an unpaved trail.
part of the challenge of a sidewalk, just from a engineering aspect, is that a sidewalk, you have, if you're going to put a sidewalk next to the road, you will likely have to put like some sort of curbing with it, like a curb and gutter type thing. So it becomes a very expensive one.
Storm drain.
And storm drain, and I mean, you're talking a whole lot of infrastructure to be required to do that. Because curbs are considered protective barriers and stuff like that for those using sidewalks. So it's a bit of a lot more challenging for a sidewalk. I mean, not that we couldn't ask the question, but it would be
So it's
almost
more likely it
prohibit-
would be a sort of paved trail.
kind of a paved trail, but and you have to have a little bit of a buffer
Or just a path.
or a path or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I understand that. That makes sense.
So again, we have to, as we go forward, is it a trail, meaning it could be for walking or biking, or because it's Woodland Hills Drive, because we wouldn't want little kids riding their bikes on Woodland Hills Drive. And then that determines the width and everything else, but, and the paved, unpaved part. That all leads to the safety of the trail, not just having a trail.
Mhm.
Right. And if it's there, I feel like keeping kids off of it will be hard because the kids that are here like to walk around.
Well, and right now we get so many pedestrians. Every morning I drive down Woodland Hills Drive to work from my house. I only drive half of it, and I'll bet I pass a half a dozen people out walking right in the road because there's nowhere else to walk. So
Mhm.
we get a lot of walkers around the community. So trails would be, I think, helpful for a safety aspect from that.
Yeah.
And when you say trails, you're largely talking then unpaved trails along existing roads.
Or paved, either one, paved or
Okay.
unpaved. And maybe that's a question to ask people, what would their preference be? Paved or unpaved trails?
Right.
Most of our trails, like you walk down into Summit Creek and stuff like that, or up around our park, they're paved trails.
Mhm. And I think with the older demographics, they want stability. So as I see older people walking around in the middle of the street, it's because the stability of the trail. And the steepness of the switchbacks keep them off of that trail. So I think that, personally, I think they're going to say paved, which then requires trail easements to be purchased, which also might be a question, so that they realize we can't just arbitrarily come in and make a trail just because you want it. Right. And so there might be a mechanism there on that aspect, because people, especially if they say, oh, it's going to go up at Woodland Hills Drive, all of those who live on Woodland Hills Drive might get a little anxious.
Yeah. Okay.
And we don't want to be accused of a taking, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Kirsten mentioned moms with kids. So are there designated areas in town where school buses stop? And have there been concerns with the places that school buses stop? And I don't know, is there a desire to have added infrastructure, signage, flashing lights, trails, sidewalks on certain strategic areas for safe routes to school? Is that something that's been discussed?
We don't get to choose. The school district chooses, the school bus personnel choose where the bus stops are, depending on the amount of children who are going to be utilizing the bus. So as they look each year at their demographics of where buses are going to go, it's based on how many students that bus will pick up at that particular location. So although they've been pretty consistent over the years, they do change.
Okay.
So one of the things that I notice on my street, because the kids are not at every home, they're just here and there, the bus stops at each house and picks the kids up at the end of their driveway.
Okay.
And if there are maybe a lot of kids in some areas, they wouldn't do that. But on our street, they tend to stop at each home.
They're
Whereas I
not doing that over in ours.
No, mine either. I can see them all traipse off and they all walk down the hill together, but they definitely are not stopping for everybody here.
They've done that in our area until there came too many kids, and then they went to one stop. So I think it just depends on the route.
Okay. All right. So then a question about code enforcement. I don't know if you already know how your city feels about code enforcement, if they're anti-government or if they just want things clean. But we can ask that. Another thing that got mentioned is dark skies. I'm curious.
Back,
Yeah.
Daniel, just for a second on code enforcement, it might
Huh?
be good to have a question. Do you know how to go forward if you have a complaint on code enforcement?
Oh.
Because a lot of times people, they complain to each other and it finally gets around to us, but until there's been something officially done, our code enforcement guy can't get out there.
Yep.
And not that we want tattletelling, but are they understanding what the process is for code enforcement?
You can just put, don't complain on Facebook, but let the people, the office know, and we can do
Mhm.
something about it.
Okay. So that would be an educational question, right? I'll do something that would be educational followed by a question. Okay. Dark skies. So obviously Woodland Hills is still blessed to have some dark skies that you don't have where I live. Question would be, should the city take proactive steps to preserve the night sky? And then would you support additional exterior lighting requirements? I don't know what exterior lighting requirements you already have as it relates to light shielding, correlated color temperature, lumen output, that sort of thing. I don't know if that's already in your code for new build.
It's kind of limited.
Okay.
There are the Parks and Trail System, committee is trying to do a formal declaration of dark skies, but we're not there yet. People like the dark sky, but we are having more and more people get those jelly lights up, and I don't know, I get calls about those quite a bit. Don't they have to turn them off at 10 p.m.? So I think some conversation around that would be helpful. On do you want lights off like we have our sound or our nuisance ordinance? Would you want lights to be similar to what we do for noise?
Okay. Sorry, just making a note. Okay. I have a question on there that says, would you support the city exploring dark sky certification? If I put a question like that on there, is that too alarmist? Is that something you think where the city council would see that and say, oh, that's like handcuffing us or something? Or do you think that's a fine question to ask?
I think it would be okay, but a lot of people don't understand what that designation means. So if there's any chance you could put a link to what that criteria means, then that might help them understand, because people all the time will say, yeah, we want a dark sky community. And they think that means everybody has to turn all their lights off, no more exterior lighting at all. Not just the illumination and where it's directed and all of those types of things. So maybe that is again another educational piece on, do you want it? This is what this means, or do you just want to limit some of the things to maintain the dark skies we currently have?
Okay. That's great. All right. And then from here, so we're just about done here. If you could add one thing to the city, what would it be? Are there specific amenities or facilities that are currently lacking? And then any other feedback? With amenities or facilities, I was wondering, does the city already have interlocal agreements or something in place to work with surrounding jurisdictions to provide access to like the library, Parks and Rec, a rec center? What discussions have been in place? What's already in place?
They can use it, but they have to pay the non-resident fee for library, recreation center, etc. There's no interlocal agreement between us and them for any of those. You just pay the non-resident fee.
And for library, are they able to get a card with a non-resident fee?
For like $100 a year per family, yes, but it's just like any other city. It's not like just because we don't have a big library, we don't have a special deal with them or anything.
Okay. Is there appetite or curiosity about any particular amenity, like to do an interlocal agreement, or do we not ask the question?
I mean, I know that rec centers are super popular around here, and they're one of the only, it's not like we have like YMCA's or things like that.
Right.
And not having access to a rec center is not great, but then again, our population is so much older. Interlocal agreements would be awesome, but I feel like, have we explored that already? have we tried that before? Is it too expensive? Like what's the history behind why we haven't tried that?
Is that even a option? Do other cities even consider that in this state? I'm not sure I've seen that.
Not very often because their taxpayers are paying for the facility. And so that's why they went to just the non-resident fee, because they're being paid, that, their facilities are being paid for by their city taxpayers. And so most of them were not open to just having some agreement.
Yeah, you'd
So
have to pay into it. The city
yeah,
would have to
and
pay into it.
the city would have to pay into it, and we don't have that kind of funds, and we don't even know who would use it. So in the long run, even with sports, we tried to do our own sports league even for a while, and it didn't quite work out. And so we utilized Salem, but again, you're paying the non-resident fee, and
I
it
think it
seems
might
to
be
work
interesting.
okay.
I think it might be interesting to find out if residents are interested. I mean, because you just said we weren't sure if they would actually be interested in it, and we're doing a survey. We could find out.
Yeah.
Let's find out
I-
if people are interested in this or not.
In the 3 years I worked here at the city office, I've had one person ask about an interlocal agreement for libraries.
And we had one when Salem first opened their small little teeny library, because I helped work on that. And there was a group of us from Woodland Hills, a group in Salem. We all worked together. But when it came after it was over, at the time, those in the city didn't feel like it was, well, we didn't even have a budget to be able to do that kind of thing for the library. And it's still such a small library that most people are either paying to use Provo's, or Spanish Fork now has a new library. They'll use either of those two. Unfortunately, Utah County doesn't have the same as Salt Lake County, which is a regional library system. And so for Utah County, you have to buy into each library separately.
Yes. But that's not, I mean, so the library might not be a thing we could do, but what about the rec centers? Especially, isn't Spanish Fork building a brand new rec center? And doesn't Salem also have a rec center?
Spanish Fork, Salem doesn't really have they have a little one, but I don't know if it's what people would expect.
But I know it does have a lot of like senior activities, and if that's the majority of our people here, that might be something that they might be interested in. I don't know. I'd be interested to see who said they would be interested in what.
Okay. I could think of some questions as relates to that, and include it in there, and then send it out to you guys, and you can tell me what you think. And we can nix things, we can massage it.
Awesome.
How about that? Okay.
We've got 2 weeks to Woodland Hills Days. I assume that's the goal.
That's the goal, to have it out the week before Woodland Hills Day. So I'm thinking toward the end of next week to
And
have it
another
publicly available.
question I had, though I don't feel like it was addressed in the survey, was people's feelings toward commercial zoning in Woodland Hills.
I asked that just once, but we could ask it more. So what about commercial? would
Okay,
you want
sorry,
to ask?
maybe I just missed it, but
It was only one question.
just feel like
Yeah, I think we need to see, because we have heard, especially on that lower level that's, more connected on 11200, potential mixed use development type of question, right? Where we could have housing and possibly additional revenue sources.
Like
'cause
small
sometimes
business.
yeah. Because people sometimes are saying, oh, I don't want commercial, but when they look at our revenue stream, only property tax, they are saying, well, why don't we do something else? But they need to realize that it's sales tax then that actually could potentially help us. But we haven't even done a study to see if sales tax, if that area would even generate enough sales tax. But it's a question to ask.
And I
What-
think you have to be careful about the way you word it. I mean, people around here are so sensitive about what goes in where. Oh my gosh, multifamily, you guys are gonna kill the mountains. Anyways.
Yeah. Or our view. I know a lot of people look onto that area and they're worried about the light, and the word commercial is scary, but if you phrase it like small businesses, it's less scary. So just, I would be careful with that one too.
And what do I call that area? I think for the survey, it'd be good to narrow it and say, in this area, would you support? And then I
The
can.
lower, people call it the lower part of town near the mailboxes or roundabout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or like the farm
You
off
have-
11200.
Yeah.
That's what I
The
was
property,
thinking.
bet-
200.
the property between the two churches.
Yeah, also.
I'd put like mixed use, small community, small business. I don't know, something that's just not intimidating.
Yeah, not a gas station and a Disneyland.
Well, and
Exactly.
two, that's another aspect is if it's mixed use, you could also then include a trail system and a park down there, right? Trail system, parked, mixed use, maybe some small businesses that make it more of a small community, because that area doesn't, it's mostly flat land. It doesn't have the trees that the rest of the town has. So there are people I know who have talked to me that are more open to a different plan for that space than what we traditionally have on the mountains where there's trees.
You could call it a Main Street area or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Town square.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I like Town Square because it makes it seem like it's not going to be this big commercial development.
Okay. All right. So
I just think that's gonna be a really contested topic as the strategic and general plan roll out. That's one of the bigger concerns, and you're gonna get
Yes.
people on all sides of that.
Yes.
Everyone's going to be vocal about it. Yeah.
okay.
And I also think though that there's people who want to control what happens there, considering we're having commercial development all around us on all the other sides. And so by having some control over what goes in there, but still could maybe provide revenue, and then also still have that quality of life like you've been talking about, Daniel, that seems to be our number one issue, no matter what the discussion is how do we maintain the quality of life and develop and provide services and have revenue source and still have your family a place? Because especially if we put a 55 and older community down there, they would want a trail that is flat because they're not going to go up the switchbacks or even Woodland Hills Drive. So having some sort of pocket parks and a trail system, even in that lower area, there probably are people who would consider that, and then have that mixed use intertwined, as Cody said, more of a Main Street type atmosphere of a small town.
Mm-hmm. So mixed use, like a mixed use Main Street. Okay.
Whatever, however you can soften it, I think, whatever words you can use to make it so that they understand that it's just small community, small business, small,
Yes.
like it doesn't, like the words you want to stay away from are multifamily and commercial.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's wise. One thing we didn't mention is ADUs. Right now, they are required under state code, an internal ADU, but an external accessory dwelling unit is not required under state code, as in Woodland Hills does not have to accept them, right?
We
What-
just
Yeah.
passed something about that. Gosh darn it, I'm trying to remember the specifics, but we did put in there the internal and the external if people have enough property space to still have the setbacks, etc. But I don't know if Wayne's still listening. He probably has all of the details. I don't have them in front of me.
Well, and
Wait.
more importantly, are there any questions that the city has about not their internal, because that's state code, doesn't matter, people don't want to do it, state code forces it, but external ADUs, are there questions that the city has about that policy? It looks like Severin unmuted himself.
As Carrie said, we did pass an ordinance And we set up the parameters where we can have an external ADU, but it is not a requirement.
Do you have questions for the city about that? Is there any, like, would you want any feedback on that policy?
We asked for feedback when we had the open meeting
Mhm.
to discuss the ordinance. So we've already gone through that portion of it. Yeah.
Okay.
The council also had a public hearing, so there were 2 public hearings that we got feedback from, and people are okay with the overall concept of that. But again, it still has to meet our building code, our setbacks, etc. So that helps people.
Okay. Well, good. I think that's it for the survey. I'll get you the draft. So lastly, the schedule. I will get the draft out shortly, either tomorrow or Tuesday. And so the next week you can take a look at the draft. Hopefully we can get it out, I guess maybe the end of next week, the very latest, the beginning of the following week. And it'll be live during Woodland Hills Day. I'm going to be there during Woodland Hills Day. So I'll have to coordinate that probably with with Carrie.
Well, and make sure to recognize that different demographics come to different parts of Woodland Hills Day. So
Okay.
definitely,
I'll
the
be there the whole
evening
time.
the evening will get more families. The breakfast is when all the older people will come. That's going to be at the city center, not at the
Okay.
park. And so there's just recognize that that's probably how to get the most people, but not everybody in town comes to those
No.
things. So we might want to make sure that we have an alternate way to get the survey out as well. And do you have a way to make sure that people aren't just taking it over and over and over again, but that it's limited to 1 per person? I mean, we can't say 1 per household because we have multiple people living in households, but
Yeah, so it does say 1 per household on it. There's not really a way to limit it. However, I can see the answers, and it's really obvious when you have duplicates, especially with the fill in the blanks. People tend to write the same thing with the same phrases and wording.
yeah.
And so, and so I can manually go in and adjust it for that, but I don't really have a great way to control. It'd be really expensive on our end because I'm just going to use Google Forms. So it'd be very expensive
Okay.
to do something where we track IP addresses and all of that.
Because I'm just concerned because we don't want just, oh, well, the person who got the email, right, is whoever pays the bill. So they, whether it's husband or wife or whatever, right? And then the other person doesn't even know there was a survey. I think it's important that we have a good round number of the demographics so that we have multiple people. And as we said earlier, there are some who have family members who are living in the basement,
Yeah.
and so those younger people, we want to get their point of view as well in case they ever do become their own homeowner. So I don't want us to limit, but we don't also want that 1 person who does it 50 times.
Sure.
Isn't there like a limit to 1 response in Google Forms?
Yes, it can be limited by email address.
I mean, I feel like that works.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they would have separate emails.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of work to put on every email, and nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's good to know your timeline. It looks like we won't have anything to vote on next. We're not approving the survey today. Any further discussion before we, motion to adjourn?
Yeah. So with hosting this survey, we'll have it on Google Forms, but in the RFP, we said we'd have a website for the general plan. Do we want, or should we do that general plan through the website through the city, or should we just host it separately? We can create its own domain name, like Woodland Hills General Plan 2020.com. That's available, so we could set that up really quick.
I know when Spanish Fork did theirs, it was very helpful to have one that was separate. And they actually gave out little like business cards with the QR code, and they put it in their newsletter, etc. And people could just go straight to the QR code. It went straight to that site. they felt like it was more independent of than that somebody was just overlooking all of their answers, or, you know, there's always a distrust. So I liked that idea of the business cards with the QR code.
Okay.
Also, we want to make sure that not that we have this open for enough time period that and through a variety of mechanisms, right? Whether we put it in at Woodland Hills Day Live, right? We put it in the city newsletter that you can have access, put it on the website, put it on the Facebook pages, but we have four very distinct areas of our town, and it might be good to put that link in those newsletters that are specifically to those areas, because not everybody is on Facebook. Not everybody thinks to go to the website, but they tend to read their own geographic newsletter.
And when does that newsletter, the next newsletter, go out?
For the city or for the smaller subgroups? The cities goes out once a month, but I can't remember
Okay.
what day. Do you remember, Lori? And then the others
It'll go
are
out in a
independent.
couple. It'll go out in a couple of days. It's usually the first of the month.
What are the smaller subgroup emails? What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I'm
I don't know
talking
about
about
that either.
I'm talking about ecclesiastical
Oh,
emails.
the church
of the
things.
four-
Okay.
the very-
I was like, what?
I didn't want to say it that way, but the
The four
ecclesiastical
wards.
newsletters, we have 4 distinct areas in our city that all have their own newsletters that people read no matter what. Even if they don't read the city one, they will read those ones. So
Assuming
just
they're part of the
another,
church, but yes, not everybody reads them.
right. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is that there's multiple, we have to catch everybody at multiple levels, right? So
Yeah.
some will read the newsletter, some will see it on social media, some will see
Put
it
it
on
in
the
the
website.
mailboxes.
And
Yeah.
and then there's that other link to those who are in that 4 ecclesiastical districts that we could put it in their newsletters as well, for those who only get their information that way. Each of them have a section that they have dedicated to city things that they'll
Right.
post about Woodland Hills Day or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so this
We
could
should
just be
also
another
include
one
the
of those things.
mailboxes. I think a mailboxes
Yes.
is also a place that I see people stopping and looking. We all have to get our mail, so I think the mailbox is a great spot to put that too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
under the glass, under the glass side.
Yes, the official side.
Okay, so to get it in that newsletter, it would go out end of September then, the next one that we can make?
Well, the 1st of September and then the 1st of October.
Yeah, I think she has everything due. Like, I mean, when I write stuff for it, she usually has me give it to her around the 20th or 24th of every month, and then it goes to that next month.
Okay. All right. Well, then that means, because the next meeting I would like to do, well, the RP says the next meeting would be in person. We can do that to go over the results of the survey, but then that puts it in the mid-October. Is that, yeah, because this will need a close then in mid-October to give people time to get the newsletter and respond. So maybe like October 10th or something like that. So does that timeline sound like it would work? Meet in person, go over the responses, do the visioning for the strategic plan as an in-person meeting in October?
So
Yeah.
just so you know, that week of the 13th through the 19th, somewhere in there is fall break for our citizens. So maybe that week following, like somewhere between the 21st and 25th.
Yep, that's right. I will be gone that week too. Okay.
Just a
I think that's
reminder.
fine.
Yes.
I think it's important that we get this in the newsletter, and so I think it's
Mhm.
appropriate to wait to get the discussion on results.
Yep.
Into October.
Okay. Well, there we go. That's all I got.
Okay, well, I motion to adjourn. If there's no other discussion needs.
Second that.
Great. Thank you, Lori. All others vote on the adjournment.
Yay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay, Lori or Cody, thank you. Okay, great. All right, all, thank you very much.
Right.
And
Thanks, everyone.
we should say to the committee, if you have any names that you want to put forth for me to bring to the council on a replacement for Cody, please call or text me and let me know so that
I
I
will-
can look to them and then be able to present some names when we're ready. And Cody, thank you for such a we've been talking about this for years and we finally get started and you're moving, but we're sad to
I'm
see you
gone,
go. But good luck in your future. Where are you going?
I'm just gonna be moving to Spanish Fork.
Okay, well, so not too
Yep.
far away. We'll see you at Costco. All right.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, see you
Okay.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.